The galaxy had not witnessed a war like this in countless millennia. For centuries, the great empires among the stars had waged conflicts against one another. But these were wars with limits, skirmishes over territory, trade routes, and pride. Planets were bartered like currency, systems were conquered but not annihilated. There were codes, treaties, and unspoken rules that all adhered to. Wars were never meant to exterminate, only to realign power. Then they made the fatal mistake of attacking Earth. No one had ever considered humanity a real threat. Earth was a forgotten backwater, a primitive world by galactic standards, barely noticeable in the grand scheme of cosmic politics. The Dominion, a vast and sprawling empire of cold-blooded, reptilian Zari overlords, viewed Earth as little more than a curiosity, a nuisance to be crushed for sport, perhaps as a rite of passage for their younger warlords. They descended upon the blue planet with their gleaming warships, confident in a swift and effortless conquest. They expected banners of surrender. What they found instead was hell. The opening days of the war were catastrophic. Humanity was fractured, unprepared, and hopelessly outmatched. Cities burned from orbit. Populations vanished in searing flashes of plasma. Entire continents turned to ash within hours. The Zari laughed at the feeble resistance, their soldiers marching arrogantly through the ruins of human civilization, believing victory was already theirs. But they underestimated the one thing no empire could measure: humanity's will to survive. First, it was desperation. Then it became something far more dangerous. Surrender was never an option. Survival wasn't enough. The war morphed into something monstrous, a conflict not bound by honor or civility. Humanity refused to die quietly. The galaxy, so accustomed to sanitized wars, had never seen warfare like this. Humanity fought with weapons and tactics the stars had never imagined. The Dominion had come expecting a civilized battle. What they encountered was annihilation. Earth's soldiers turned to guerrilla warfare, improvised, ruthless, and unrelenting. Every street, every cratered ruin became a trap. They used every dirty trick, every ounce of human ingenuity born from centuries of conflict, to claw back their world. When humanity learned to fight in space, when they adapted, when they evolved, the war changed forever. The first major victory came unexpectedly. A ragtag band of survivors managed to capture a Zari warship, not with superior firepower, but with raw savagery. They stormed the vessel like demons from humanity's darkest myths, slaughtering the alien crew with bare hands and makeshift weapons when their firearms failed. No one knew exactly how they did it, only that the impossible had happened. With that stolen ship, they took the war to the stars. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the tide turned. Human warships, cobbled together from wreckage and reverse-engineered alien tech, struck deep into Dominion territory. Fast, relentless, and utterly without mercy, they became a plague upon the stars. Planets that had known only peace for generations now burned as humanity avenged its fallen. The Dominion, once the most feared empire in the known universe, began to unravel. Zari soldiers, who had once been the conquerors, now fled in terror at the sight of Earth's war banners. But this wasn't just war. This was something far worse. It was personal. Humanity didn't merely conquer, they erased. Species that had allied with the Dominion were wiped out without hesitation. Entire civilizations were reduced to smoldering ruins. The peaceful races of the galaxy, those who had looked down on Earth's primitive culture, now begged for mercy. But mercy had died on Earth, buried beneath the ashes of its cities. And so the war dragged on. The galaxy trembled. What had begun as a fight for survival had become something far darker. Vengeance, a wrath so complete it consumed everything in its path. The Dominion's desperate retreats only shattered the illusion of their former invincibility. Before the war with humanity, they had been the undisputed rulers of the stars. Now, their fleets burned in the cold vacuum of space. Their generals lay slain. Their worlds fell, one by one, into ruin and dust. The horror was not in humanity's victories, but in how they fought. The Zari had always waged war with a cold efficiency. They enslaved. They conquered. But they never obliterated. Wars had always ended with surrender, with a new ruler upon a new throne. Humanity, however, had no interest in thrones. They sought nothing less than erasure. The turning point, the moment the galaxy truly understood what was coming, was the fall of Warship 9. A fortified Dominion military outpost for centuries, its defense fleets were considered impenetrable. Yet, when the human warships arrived, there was no formal declaration of war. No warning. The sky simply exploded into fire. Humanity didn't land troops. They didn't take prisoners. They bombed Warship 9 until the surface boiled, until its oceans vaporized into steam, until not a single Zari remained. And then they moved on. Planet after planet met the same fate. The few Dominion soldiers who survived the early campaigns returned with whispers of nightmares. Human ground troops, when they descended, didn't behave like soldiers. They were executioners. They didn't fight for territory or resources. They fought to exterminate. Even Zari colonies that had never participated in the war were torn apart. Civilians were butchered. Cities were leveled. There were stories, gruesome stories, of human warriors draped in the bones of their fallen enemies, their laughter echoing through the rubble as they advanced. The rest of the galaxy watched in horror. The Dominion's once proud Grand Council became a den of fear. Supreme Chancellor Vor, once a symbol of Zari dominance, now stood gaunt and broken before his advisors. "They will not stop," one whispered. "We must surrender. Offer them our empire." But Vor shook his head, his voice hollow. "You think they want our surrender? They do not want peace. They do not want our rule." He gestured to the holographic projection of their burning capital world, now a wasteland of fire and bone. "They want us dead." The Dominion prepared for its final stand at Zealer Prime, their homeworld. Desperate defense platforms cluttered the orbit. Warships from the farthest reaches of their empire limped into position. Yet deep down, they all knew it was futile. The human fleet arrived without fanfare.
No threats, no negotiations.
They had learned by now humanity didn't waste time with words. They simply killed. Zari warships, once nightmares of galactic warfare, crumbled within minutes. The humans had adapted with every battle, evolved with every loss. What were once crude steel vessels had become precise instruments of annihilation. Within hours, Zealer Prime's defenses collapsed. Then came the ground assault. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. Zari warriors fought with a hopeless fury. Mothers clutched their children. Elders prayed to gods that no longer answered. But humanity was relentless. They did not seek surrender. They sought erasure. The royal palace, a symbol of Zari dominance for millennia, was reduced to molten rubble. And then it was over. The last Zari signal faded into silence. The Dominion was gone. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the storm to pass. But this was not peace. It was terror. The kind of terror that lingers in the quiet moments, when the screams have faded but the memory remains. Humanity had not won the war. They had become the war. No longer fractured, no longer divided by nations and politics, the human race now had a singular, burning purpose. Vengeance had united them in a way no ideology ever could. And with their greatest enemy obliterated, the galaxy feared a single, suffocating question. Who was next? The other galactic empires scrambled to send envoys to beg for peace. They offered reparations, alliances, anything to escape the fate of the Dominion. Humanity's response came as a single transmission, 3 cold, mechanical words. "We are watching." It wasn't a peace offering. It was a warning, but the terror only deepened. Reports emerged of human warships appearing far beyond Dominion space, deep within uncharted territories. They moved without broadcasting signals, silent phantoms at the edge of sensor ranges. Entire convoys vanished without a trace. Military outposts fell silent. Distorted transmissions, laced with static, began flooding emergency channels across the galaxy. But through the interference, a single message repeated, always the same. "You watched as they burned our world. Now we are watching you." Empires that had once stood unchallenged for millennia collapsed under the weight of paranoia. Trade routes were abandoned. Border patrols retreated inward. The galaxy became a graveyard of anticipation. Humanity didn't occupy. They didn't conquer. They simply vanished, leaving only fear behind. And that fear was enough. For the first time in galactic history, there was peace. Not a peace of diplomacy or treaties. A peace born from terror. An unnatural, suffocating quiet, where no empire dared risk waking the sleeping giant in the dark. Because in the endless void of space, every ruler, every civilization, knew one chilling truth. Humanity was still watching, and they were not done.